All right, today's video is reading strategies. Read with your brain turned on. So I'm really excited about doing this one because I love reading, and anything I can do to help you guys enjoy reading even more makes me really excited. All right, so this is something a lot of students tell me when they're reading. They feel like they're kind of lost in space. Those aren't the words they use, but that's what it sounds like to me. So tell me if this sounds like you. Do you read a few pages in a book and completely forgot what you just read? Your brain is out in space. You need to bring it back where it belongs in the book. This lesson is going to show you what your brain should be doing as you read. Question, connect, infer, evaluate, summarize, and predict. If your brain is on while you are reading, you'll be able to monitor your own understanding better. So this idea of being lost in space is something that a lot of students tell me is, Miss Oyola, I'll read a couple pages and then I don't even know what I read. You could ask me and I won't even know what you're talking to me about. And that could be for a couple of reasons. Some of them are easier to fix than others. Sometimes it's because your brain is just out there and you're just floating around in space. And that's what we're trying to fix right now, okay, is helping you get your brain where it belongs, thinking about what you're reading instead of what's going on tomorrow or what happened at school today or whatever. You thinking about the book that you're reading. I'm not saying that that's always what's going on. There can be other stuff going on. Maybe you're reading a book that you're not ready for whatever reason. So if this doesn't fix it, if you're honestly trying to do these different things that I'm about to show you and you still find yourself lost in space, you need to have a conversation with an adult, with your teacher. But the focus of this lesson is step one. So if you're lost in space and you can't remember what you're reading after you read a couple pages, try doing this first. And that is using these things in your head as you're reading. All right, the first one is question. As you read, you should be asking lots of questions in your head. You should be talking to your book, not actually verbally talking, even though sometimes when I get really excited about what I'm reading, I will just shout something out and it really freaks people out because I'll just be sitting there with my book and be like, oh, you don't want to be constantly talking at the book, but your brain should be constantly talking at the book. And that means asking lots of questions. It's helpful to think about different types of questions. English teachers tell students that there are 4 types of questions that students should be using when they're reading. First one is a right there question. The answer is in the text. It can be found in one or a few sentences that are close to one another. So, you can be like, what was that character's name? Oh yeah, there it is. It's right there. That's why it's called a right there question. What was his mom's name? There it is, right there. Think and search questions. The answer is in the selection, but you need to put together different pieces of information to find it. So thinking about character names again, it's like, okay, what were all the names of the characters in the family? Who's who again? Let me flip back and check and make sure I know who everybody is, and just keeping all that straight in my head. So you don't have to do any hard thinking here. It's just keeping track of facts, which sounds boring, but is so important, because if you're not keeping track of those facts while you're reading, you're going to be totally lost. Author and me questions. The answer is not directly stated. You'll have to make an inference to come up with the answer. So why is this character acting like this? Here are the clues in the text, and let me think about this, and I'm going to try to come up with an answer myself. On my own questions, the answer is not in the text. You're going to have to think about your own experiences or do some research. So if let's say you're reading a book that takes place in the 1960s in Birmingham, Alabama, and they're making references to the civil rights movement, you don't know a lot about that, well, you're probably going to have to go and look some information up for what's happening in the story to make sense. All right, connect. Make connections to the story to help you relate to what is happening in the story. So that's like, oh, this reminds me of blah, blah, blah. There are 3 major types of connections. My blah, blah, blah will make more sense when I actually explain it. So text to self, connect the novel to something in your own direct experience. So, wow, this character's feeling a lot of shame for what he did to his sister. That reminds me of the time I felt a lot of shame for what I did to a family member, someone close to me. Text to text, connect the novel to another narrative you know. wow, the theme in this book of, family being important is really similar to the theme in this movie that I saw. Movies count as long as it's something with a narrative structure. You should always try to impress your English teacher and reference it to another book, but books are fine too. And some video games that have really strong narrative structures. Text to world. Connect the novel to real world places, peoples, or history. So, again, thinking about that civil rights movement reference, when you're reading Watson's Go to Birmingham 1963, you need to connect it to real world history, or what happens at the end of the book isn't going to make any sense. Don't connect to little ideas. Connect to bigger concepts such as character traits, character emotions and motivations, and overall novel themes. So don't be like, oh, there was a tree in this book, and then there was a tree in the other book, so I'm going to make a connection. No, no, no. You want to go big stuff. Like, what is the character feeling? Why is the character doing these things? What are the big themes in this novel? What are the big messages or lessons that this text is trying to teach us? That's what we connect to. Infer and evaluate. These are things that require those bigger types of questions. So the author doesn't come out and tell you everything. Sometimes you have to make an inference to fill in the gaps. To make an inference, use your own brain power as well as the clues in the text. You evaluate a text when you try to make really big inferences. So let's go through an example. If figuring out one character trait for the protagonist requires an inference, say, so like, wow, this guy is really being a jerk to her. He's just not being very kind. I wonder why he's doing that. Maybe he's just kind of an aggressive person. Maybe he's just kind of a rude person. Okay, so that's an example of one character trait. But figuring out all of the protagonist's character traits, as well as thinking about how those traits have changed throughout the novel, requires evaluation. So that's like taking a whole bunch of little inferences and putting them together. So being like, okay, so at the beginning of the novel, the character was really rude and he was withdrawn and he was kind of aggressive. And as the novel progressed, he began to grow as a person, and we recognized that he had this whole background with his family that was leading him to behave this way. That's a full-blown evaluation because I'm pulling together all these inferences I've been making throughout the text. All right, summarize, super, super important step. Wrapping up everything you just read in the story. So let's say you just read, about 10 pages. In your head, take a couple seconds and be like, all right, here's what happened in my story. And one of the best ways you can do that is following the somebody wanted but so method. So you fill in each of these with a topic. So what did they want? What happened? So what did they do? So right now, for example, my sister keeps telling me I need to read The Secret Garden, so I'm reading The Secret Garden. So for me, Mary wanted some flower seeds, but she's not allowed to leave the house by herself, so she's going to send money to her helper's, I think it's his brother, and he's going to pick up the seeds for her. So now we're going to have a new character come in. So I'm going through the list and using these to help me make my summary. Somebody wanted but so. She wanted seeds, but she can't get them, so she's going to have somebody buy them for her. Okay? This will help you remember what happened the next time you read the novel. So predict. What do you think will happen next in the story? Use lots of details from your text to back up your answers. Clues can come from character traits, plot parts, and themes. This is not a random guess. You can't be like, I predict everyone in the book is going to die the next time I read it. If you're going to say something like that, you better be ready to predict, you better be able to explain why. Like, what's been happening in the book that makes you think the author is going to kill off every single character. Use evidence. So going back to what I've been reading in The Secret Garden, I predict she's going to be meeting the brother pretty soon, and he's going to be helping her in the garden because I already know that the brother loves gardening, and he loves, he loves growing, and he's a very just outdoorsy kind of person, and obviously we want to know what he could teach her in their relationship. So that's my prediction, is that he's going to be making an appearance very soon. Notice how I used my evidence in the text and explained why I thought the author would want to bring them together. I'm not just saying I think they're gonna make out. Okay, they're little kids. That doesn't make sense, even though that would be very bizarre. Write this down. Here's a list of all the strategies in one place. So you can go ahead and pause this slide to get all of these down. And here's your skill check, answering all the questions that follow about the things you just learned. So hopefully today's video taught you a little bit about how to be a better reader. As always, reach out if you have questions.